Hey guys, stick around after the episode to hear a sneak peek of Racism After Death, a new special feature from Purple Mountain Pods.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our holiday special, our holiday episode. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, even though that doesn't start technically until the day after the 25th.
Happy solstice.
Happy solstice.
Happy solstice.
Happy December for those atheists out there.
Happy December.
Yeah.
Happy final month of 2020.
Oh my God, thank God. We made it, guys. We made it.
Celebrating the streets.
Yeah.
This is Spark in the Valley. I'm Julius.
I'm Alex.
I'm JP.
And I'm Cody.
And today we have decided to kind of touch on a topic that can sometimes be a bit of a, I don't know.
Contentious topic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's kind of spurred on by some legislation it's passed the House and is now coming into the Senate. So today we're going to discuss cannabis.
Just having a I was about to say having a mature conversation around it.
Yeah.
Having a real conversation. Just having like an actual
Well, just talking about different things that impact our country involving cannabis and a lot of the misrepresentation and also just the negative effects that we've had because of things like Reagan era war on drugs and things like that. This is kind of, we'll talk more about the legislation around the cannabis and how it could be like a really revolutionary piece of legislation and why that is as well. So today we're going to talk about, I wanted to start with talking about the legislation that just passed the House, which was a kind of revolutionary thing. The House voted to decriminalize marijuana this week. And actually a few Republicans voted with it, probably because they know that there's a lot of money involved here.
Yeah.
And
Republicans love money.
Republicans, everybody loves money. That's the problem. That's a big problem in our politics. Everybody loves money.
Yeah, would you say to yourself, like, if that's the case, then why isn't everybody on board? Like, it could generate so much, just effortless money.
Absolutely.
Lobbyists, man.
Yeah, there's so much that comes into it, though. And unfortunately, it's not expected to pass the Senate. I mean, maybe if we win the runoffs in Georgia, there's a chance.
Georgia.
But there's such a slim chance of that happening.
We can do it, though. Stacey Abrams, she's still got the billboards up.
Yeah.
She's still
and there's
working.
a chance. I mean, there's a chance.
I mean, we didn't think that Biden would win.
Georgia, y'all can do this, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we also have to accept that probably a chunk of Republicans voted for Biden, and they may not do the same for the Senate, So I think that we have to be, cautiously optimistic about it, but still expect that maybe it's not going to go the way we want it to, which is going to be a problem because the Senate being majority Republican means Mitch McConnell's still in charge, and that man is just the worst.
Have you guys heard any ads? So I listen to Chattanooga radio stations at work because that's what I pick up, and there's all kinds of Senate ads, and then one of them will be like a smear campaign saying like the left-wing extremist, whoever the candidate is, I don't remember the name.
Warnock or
once, but then they're using really strong language like extremist. I think domestic terrorists they used in one.
Oh wow!
In an actual ad?
And then it's like this is not affiliated with any campaign. This is a privately paid for ad.
Oh shit!
And then you'll
crazy.
hear one, and it'll be the Democratic candidate, and they'll be like, "Listen, I'm not here to smear anyone, but the things that they are saying are just not true.
Just not true. Right. Well,
but
that's
it's
good.
Like, they know that those ads are being played, and it's.
That's so sad. They have to waste that money just to say, hey, that's not true.
To really, it's just confirming your own opinion that you hear, because you're hearing both perspectives.
Yeah.
There.
Right.
Yeah. God.
Well, I will say that is one thing that that I've seen a lot of like misinformation about with this particular bill that's passed through the House to decriminalize marijuana. Is that, or cannabis, we're trying to call it cannabis. Because now we'll get into it, but apparently marijuana is a racist term. So, so talking about cannabis, the bill is passing for decriminalization, not legalization. So it wouldn't be legal. It would just be that, like, in New Orleans it's decriminalized and like it's kind of up to the cops. So you get a ticket if you're black. That's unfortunate, but true. If you're white, they're just like, you can't smoke that on the street, whatever. But
wow.
I know, it's terrible. But the idea is that it would then stop so many incarcerations from happening. So, and we'll get into the mass incarceration as well, because that's a huge problem that's involved with cannabis, and this would expunge people's records, which is huge. It would also provide, there's a tax involved, which is a big part of the reason that a lot of the Republicans were not on board. There's like a tax, a 5% excise tax, that would help fund those impacted by the war on drugs. It would fund job training, legal aid, and seeking to expunge marijuana convictions and mentoring programs. Also, it would expunge federal convictions dating to 1971 or dating probably from 1971 is what I assume. This says two, but I would assume it's from 1971. And bars the denial of federal public benefits or security clearances on the basis of cannabis offenses.
Wow.
Of course, the tax has turned off a lot of Republicans, but it would actually go really far in helping people who have been in prison for a really long time for something as simple as possession, and that would then be decriminalized. So we would let people out, I would assume. And so it could be huge. It could be, but also like something I considered that they don't even talk about is like, what about people who have felony charges for cannabis? Do they give them their voting rights back?
Yeah.
I mean, I would think you would restore their voting rights, right?
There's probably a process you have to go through for that.
Well, there's a process for having your voting rights restored.
Because they did that in Florida.
Right. Well, they had to pass a ballot measure for that, I think, an amendment for that. But then there is a process you can go through where you apply and you like fill out paperwork and you do all of that, and it's appealed in front of a court and all this kind of stuff to get your voting rights back. Most people are denied. Another problem we have, and that needs to be resolved. But I would assume that if something were not a felony anymore, wouldn't it negate that felony charge if the felony charge was just related to cannabis?
That's definitely a focus that should be a part of the conversation, which is that's the hypocrisy of it,
right?
It's
we
like
keep coming back to this theme.
Just all these people making money off of it and all this other jazz.
All these rich white people.
Well,
are they looking to like an inmate who is in prison for something that would now be legal? Do they expunge their record, or is that what they would try to do, or would they just release them? Because they did break the law at the time. So would it just completely get rid of?
Well, this wants to expunge their records, I think.
So
But only if it's in certain things. Like if you were manufacturing it, that's still illegal. If you were selling it, that's still illegal. So if you have over a certain amount, but there are people in jail who've been in jail for years and years and years because they were caught with a joint on them. Like we're not talking about pounds of cannabis that you're selling or whatever. I mean, that is illegal. Absolutely, there should be what's the word I'm looking for? Punishment for that because they broke the law. But if we're decriminalizing it and it's no longer considered for having simple possession, because it's kind of crazy. I found some statistics on this. Something like 40% of all drug arrests are related to cannabis. And the vast majority, nearly 90% of those arrests were for simple possession, not sale or manufacture.
Right.
In fact, there are more arrests for cannabis possession every year than for all violent crimes combined, which includes murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery.
Yeah, and there's a counter to this argument, which is, the jails aren't quote unquote full of nonviolent drug offenders.
Yes.
But the reality of that is, they were still arrested. It's still on the record. Right. Somebody, who knows what their family went through when the raid happened, and, all these different factors that play into a community being affected by the war on drugs.
Yeah.
Just like that direct, impact on lives.
Sure. I mean, there's something extremely disproportionate about that, right? Where you have states, like something like, 5 states voted for decriminalization or legalization in some form over this last election.
Right.
3 of the 5 states voted for decriminalization or legalization, like approved it and passed it.
Yeah.
And they were states that went to Trump. So you've got,
interesting,
like in Mississippi, they became the first state in the Deep South to legalize cannabis for medical use. And that was 62% of voters approving a ballot measure in a state where Trump won 58% of the vote. So you're looking at, like, it is more popular than Trump in Mississippi.
Yeah.
How crazy is that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just time to have that conversation. It's time to... And for me, it's like, we know, we see it. There's state by state is legalizing it, is allowing it recreationally. But there's still like this weird stigma to it. This weird, like when Cody did his little, that's like, that's real though.
It is real,
because when you bring that term up,
we've just been taught as a society for so long that it's something to fear.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason, is that it became a cudgel in the hands of racists.
Yeah.
Because it was used as this term or this pastime or whatever that was only by degenerates and lowlifes, which usually translated to black and brown people. And there's a lot of the story behind it is that it came from, was it Mexico? It was a lot of the Mexican immigrants.
1910, I believe it was the Mexican Revolution, and many different. I just want to double check that, but a lot of immigrants were coming to the coastline, to Texas, to Louisiana, and with them they brought that substance, and so. At the time, it was being called, or they would call it, marijuana, and so that was picked up by the, jazz groups and different people going up towards Louisiana, and it was just something that you would, come in contact with when you would go to these different events and go to these different parties and things. And so essentially it had to be criminalized. Essentially, they had to find something wrong with it because it was bringing so much joy, right?
Right.
And
and there's also evidence that says that there were economic motives for suppressing hemp production, which I would imagine probably was related to cotton producers, majority white people, obviously, the people who were in charge of our politics and things like that. They would have had high stakes in cotton, and I imagine that hemp would have been a competitor for that. And so there were also reasons for it to be outlawed because of that. So there's many faceted reason for why it would be criminalized, but I think one of the biggest reasons is because black and brown people were smoking it and they didn't like that. And so while the white people are adopting it secretly, because we know that in this country it's pretty even for white versus black people who smoke cannabis. Like, it's a pretty even number, yet something like 4 times more likely that a black person's going to be put in jail for cannabis than a white person.
And
There was also that information from the lumber companies that there were like tariffs that they were getting charged because it was cheaper to produce paper from hemp and from. Like,
So maybe that's who the
Yeah.
economic interests were. Maybe
Yeah.
it was lumber companies,
lumber
not
companies
cotton.
trying to sell paper instead of like hemp.
I was thinking about hemp being used as rope and things like that. But actually, that's really true. I wasn't thinking about like pulp
Yeah.
for paper.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Well, when was it actually criminalized? Like it was.
I think it was 1936.
36. Okay.
I think it was prohibited then.
Yeah. And Henry Anslinger was the I don't know, something.
Secretary of State, Secretary of Interior,
Okay.
something like that.
And he, was quoted in front of Congress, basically, basically tearing the substance down and
Yeah.
attributing it to just criminal behavior and
And
just
delegitimizing all of the
deviance.
things that scientists had already been studying
Yes.
to show that it had medicinal effects and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
Also, like, there's the issue of, I guess, prohibition for alcohol would have been around that time as well. So they were probably just like still a little hurt over the
Yeah.
prohibition of
Absolutely.
alcohol. And think,
Absolutely.
what can we prohibit now?
Absolutely. But I guess the main thing that I wanted to focus on was the origination of the term marijuana and how it was used to spark fear in so many people.
Yeah.
Anslinger basically needed a term that was scary and that he could use that sounded more foreign than cannabis. And so, using the term marijuana was a way to give it like this kind of like, I don't know, something that's just
Making it the menace.
yeah, something that's
Like a foreign menace.
foreign.
Yeah, because if it sounds like it's from another country or something, or it sounds like it's from Mexico, let's be honest, that's what it sounds like. It then makes this like anti-immigrant sentiment because it's so easy to hate something that's associated with somebody you already hate. It just gives you another reason, like it's another bullet in the gun, and so it's just another thing that you can,
We know white America and their bullets.
yeah. They love them.
So, moving forward through time or through the political timeline, we get to the Nixon era. And there is a crisis on our hands, but it's not a cannabis crisis, not a marijuana crisis. It's an opioid crisis.
Right. Are you talking about Reagan?
Reagan, I'm sorry.
been Reagan, right?
My
Yeah.
bad, Reagan.
Yeah.
And
He was the war on drugs, right?
right.
Yeah.
He's a war on drugs. I apologize. And so they use cannabis. I'm even trying to have to stop myself from saying the M word.
Yeah.
But they use cannabis as
like
like
that, the M word.
the M word, as like a.
The M word. There you
Nice.
go.
I like that.
I like that.
They use it to like pair it with this addictive issue or an addiction problem that America had, which was opioids originally.
Right.
And
Or really what it's grown into.
Right.
I mean, we are in the midst of an opioid crisis right now.
Right. And a lot of people will consider, the 70s an opioid crisis. Just
sure.
like that crack epidemic.
Crack epidemic,
It's
yeah.
just like it's equal to the usage,
Oh, sure.
of people right now. But it was just kind of like viewed a different way, unfortunately. But the fact that we don't have any studies because it's been a Schedule 1 drug for so long.
Yeah.
It's unfair for us to continue to like monstrosize this
Yeah.
substance.
Is cannabis being illegal like a most of the world thing?
No, I don't think so.
You said illegal?
Yeah.
There are a lot of developed countries that have like criminalized it,
Or
it's like you can't have it there.
oh yeah,
Like,
no,
I
there's
think
definitely countries that do, but but there's a lot of them that have decriminalized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like the U.S., we're on the tail end. Of,
Yeah. Big
you know,
surprise. I know you're all shocked, guys.
I mean,
We're on the tail end of
other-
something.
A lot of places that it's actually just straight up legal.
Is there? I didn't know that.
You said, are there a lot of places that it is illegal or
It's
Oh,
legal.
straight up legal
Straight
is
up
what he
legal?
said.
Amsterdam?
Amsterdam, I know, but I don't know about other places. I
I'm
couldn't
pretty-
tell you.
I'm pretty sure all drugs are decriminalized in Portugal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's a thing.
Which Oregon just did. And that's actually really interesting because I think the idea is that a lot of that funding that would have gone to putting someone in jail, because it costs a lot of money to have a person in jail, is instead going to different rehabilitation centers and things like that to try to help people actually get over their addictions. So, I mean, I think that it could be really kind of
Yeah,
huge,
and it's
but
like-
it just depends on if they handle it correctly, which is
There are
ugh.
places in Portugal that the government has opened up for addicts that don't want to get clean, that want to continue doing drugs. They can do it monitored by like nurses that like
What?
administer. Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. Because they like when they get them in there, they'll start like talking to them about like all the stuff that like the drug is gonna do to you, like all this stuff. So they like try and talk them down.
Oh, I see.
But,
So it's
yeah.
like trying to get an abortion in America.
Kind of.
They like make you
yeah.
go through a process, but then you
Kind
can
of.
do the drugs if you go through the process.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. It
Yeah.
seems like you would just
There was-
not tell anybody and do them in your house
There was
if
a-
that were the case.
There was a this like a lot of the people that are like homeless, like just like
Oh, I
people that
see.
live
People
on the sleep,
who-
or
yeah.
live on the sleep, live on the street. But yeah, it's really in a documentary. Michael Moore did it called "Where to Invade Next," I think is what it was called.
Oh man.
Yeah, and it was him going to different countries talking about like what could they give to the U.S. So he would take like a trait of their like economy and like bring it back to the U.S. But he was
Interesting.
just like highlighting it, like Spain's like work week that was like 4 days a week, like 6 hours a day.
Right.
You know,
Something actually.
you're
like,
home for 2
manageable.
hours in the middle of the day for lunch.
Yeah, the siesta. So, the other thing that we wanted, I mean, you kind of talked about this and mentioned this. We were talking about the opioid crisis. That's actually been like a really big contributor to cannabis being decriminalized or legalized, is the idea that it can help with opioid abuse. There's actually, unfortunately, not a lot of research to support that. What happened was when they had first legalized cannabis, I think in like Colorado and stuff like that, they did a study where it came up with this data that said that opioid deaths had gone down by 25%. And everybody was like, oh man, if we legalize cannabis, if we legalize cannabis, we could actually end up solving this opioid crisis, right? And so people were really excited about it, and it ended up spurring on a lot of that, and a lot of people who were lobbying for cannabis were using that. And it turns out that there's not a great like relationship there. There's actually it's not, there's almost no change is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, it's not something that can really be proven. But one thing that was noticed in this one study that I read, it's called Medical Cannabis Legalization and Opioid Prescriptions, Evidence on U.S. Medicaid Enrollees During 1993 to 2014. And they measured like dosages and prescriptions that were given and things like that. And they found that for Schedule 3 opioid prescriptions, medical cannabis legalization was associated with a 30% reduction in number of prescriptions, a 30% reduction in dosage, and a 29% reduction in related Medicaid spending. But for Schedule 2, so Schedule 3 is like hydrocodone, oxycodone, like stuff like that. Schedule 2, or sorry, that's Schedule 2, and Schedule 3 is like codeine. So for Schedule 2 drugs, there was almost no evidence found to support the associations between cannabis legalization. So like for the serious ones, the hydrocodone and the oxycodone, that wasn't really changing. But for things like codeine, it was, and it changed by quite a lot because people were using it for pain management in a way that they weren't already addicted to opioids that were like serious opioids or whatever. But those like prescriptions and things didn't actually change. Those dosages didn't change or anything like that. Wow. But they did with the Schedule 3 drugs, which is something, it shows that there is something that you can say that cannabis has a medicinal effect. Obviously, it's helping these people because they're choosing that over codeine or whatever. But it's not making an impact on actual opioid crisis numbers,
Apparently, medicinal use of cannabis dates back at least 5,000 years.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
We have, it goes from the ancient Egyptians to the Chinese to, the Indians. 1000 BC, the Indians created a drink called bihang or biang, a mixture of cannabis, milk, and other ingredients. I bet that sounds delicious. It was used as an anti-phlegmatic and an anesthetic.
What is an anti-phlegmatic?
So phlegm. So it
like phlegm.
Probably used to
to clear out all the sinuses. I guess.
Yes. So anyway, there's a long. Yeah, I know, right? Just imagine that. There's a long history that cannabis has been around. English also documented many medicinal uses of marijuana for ailments such as menstrual cramps, convulsions, rheumatism, gout, joint pain, muscle spasms, insomnia, and issues during childbirth even. The main question is, why is it still illegal, and why is it
because racists still exist?
Scary topic for people.
Because money.
I think it's just money and time right now. Like, it's been this way for a long time, and so there's people have an idea about it and they're not willing to change that idea, and that has been not reciprocated. It's been I don't know the word I was thinking, but we see it as this line that runs through our history for the last 90 years or so.
Yeah.
And there's something that can be said that for things that we change in our society, it doesn't actually take long for one of these ideas to take root. And then it takes a really long time to change that idea. Like, once something is kind of built into our society, it takes a really long time to cut it out if it's something that is something we don't want anymore. But there's a huge proportion of our country who thinks that cannabis should be legalized or should be decriminalized at least. There's a huge portion. And I think that's encouraging that it's not even a party lines thing, even though the Congress and the Senate are voting by party lines when it comes to this issue. Our country actually doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
The majority of our country thinks that it should be decriminalized or legalized.
You said something very interesting. Good. You said something very interesting. You said about 90 years ago, is where we take our lead from this substance, or from the stigma of this substance. 1600s, 17th century, the production of hemp was regularly grown. Earliest days of settlement, hemp was grown like any other crop. It was highly encouraged to make clothing, rope, and sails. 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring that all farmers grow hemp. Some states even traded hemp as legal tender. 1700s, George Washington was interested in farming hemp. He questioned its potential for medicinal uses in his journals of 1765. 1840, cannabis became widely accepted in mainstream medicine and was an ingredient in many over-the-counter products. 1850, cannabis was added to the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. It was used as a treatment for opioid withdrawal, pain, appetite stimulation, and relief of nausea and vomiting. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're still talking about the United States of America. 1862, hashish candy was advertised in an issue of Vanity Fair. Yes, they've been around that long.
Golly, I did not know that.
1852 Vanity Fair, bro. I just saw a cover of Vanity Fair like the other day.
Absolutely. That's so crazy.
That's
I didn't know they've been
wild.
around that long.
They done seen
Wow.
some things.
Yes, they have. Whew.
They done seen some things. Vanity Fair quoted it as a pleasurable and harmless stimulant that could cure melancholy and nervousness. Can you imagine?
So my depression and anxiety could be cured
Can you imagine? 1862. My
in
goodness.
1862. They were
It'll
they
cure
were
your
progressive.
anxiety. Side effect is a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety, possibly.
That's on the side of the bottle.
Speaking of slightly relevant,
Yeah.
it was a post today, and they're saying, a possible side effect of the COVID vaccine, which just got approved by the FDA today, is death.
Right. So, go slowly or go roughly, right? 1900s to 1930. For 3 decades, cannabis was an ingredient in a variety of medications. It was marketed as a painkiller, but was also used for sedation and to treat muscle spasms. We're still talking about the United States of America. However, during that same time period, Mexican immigrants introduced recreational use of marijuana or cannabis. Because the drug became associated with the Mexican immigrants, people began to fear the drug, with anti-drug campaigners referring to it as the quote-unquote Mexican menace. 1930s, my last point. I'd like to come back to the discussion here. The Great Depression resulted in job loss for many Americans. This created more fear and stigmatization of Mexican immigrants, as many Americans worried they would take their jobs.
Oh my God, that's literally been happening since the Great
Could you
Depression.
imagine?
That's crazy.
Could you imagine? This led to more public concern over the dangers of cannabis. The media began to report that research showed that marijuana was linked to crime and violence. The media?
No.
At that same time, Harry Anslinger, commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, began a campaign to criminalize marijuana, claiming that it led to insanity. As a result of his efforts, by 1936, all states had some form of marijuana regulation laws.
Interesting. Where did you get this article?
This is on recovery.org. It is a American Addiction Center website. And so it's
I was just
giving
curious. Yeah.
It's giving a nice little background or history on cannabis.
Yeah.
I really appreciate articles like this because they really want to educate you
Right.
on it. Inside of that same article, there is the history of other drugs: heroin, LSD, methamphetamine. So they really want you to be able to like compare and contrast.
Sure.
Like, oh, I'm just doing meth. They're talking about cannabis, right?
Right.
Well, how about we look at what meth is?
Right, exactly.
And why it's bad.
Why it's so bad. Please don't do meth, guys. Oh my gosh.
But I just want to come back to the group here. I really wanted to share that. Just a little bit of,
Yeah.
it's really rough.
It is really rough, and it's really hard coming to terms with the fact that like our country is so deeply racist. Like we recorded a podcast this week, a special feature, which I urge you all to go watch or listen to. It's a podcast, but you can also watch the video on YouTube. And it's called Racism After Death. And I explore this story with my friend Skylar Knox, who discovered this cemetery that is an African-American cemetery, but it is horribly overgrown in a way that you can't even imagine. Like, it's actually really dangerous. There's sinkholes and all this kind of stuff, and it's just been left. And it's like, we don't see that in our white cemeteries, right? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of brings me around to this point. So please listen to it.
It's called Racism After Death.
Yeah, it's on the Spark in the Valley feed, so you can see it there. And and listen to it and tell us what you think. Absolutely.
Yes.
But it brings me back to this idea that our country has, like, if there's one thing we can always rely on, it's that things that have been huge, movements in our country and stuff, a lot of it is racially motivated. We've seen a lot of this throughout our history. And this is one of those things. This is one of those things that is just so racist. And it's still so racist. Like, when you asked that question earlier, you're like, so why are we still talking about this? Because it's still a huge problem. The ACLU did a report in 2013, and they said that in states with the worst disparities, blacks were on average over 6 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than whites. Now, the average across the country, I think, is 4 times more likely, which is still insane.
Yeah.
That's 400 to 600% more likely. In 2010, the black arrest rate for cannabis possession was 716 per 100,000, while the white arrest rate was 192 per 100,000. Stated another way, a black person was 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white person, a disparity that increased 32.7% between 2001 and 2010. Wow. So it's actually gotten worse. So it just shows you that, like, we haven't learned anything. Even though we're having these big, bold discussions in our Congress and in our Senate, there's actually so much happening on the local level that is so messed up.
But there's a theme here, though. There's a middleman that is, like, consistent, and that is police.
I was gonna say the cops. Yeah.
It is police. And so if we can attribute this quote unquote substance or our laws to the many, many people in jail, or that the many, many people that have suffered over this, then we need to look at the people who are directly responsible for enforcing those laws.
Yeah.
And stop and frisk, I think in New York
yeah.
was a big problem.
Oh, huge problem.
I think it's still a big problem.
Yeah.
Not as big as it was, but
no, they don't do it the same way that they used to. They don't do it at the same rate.
It's literally like, let me.
Actually, I think they might have made stop and frisk like not a thing anymore, but I don't remember. I don't know for sure. I know that it used to be really bad.
Yeah. No, I think that's a thing.
It's still a thing?
No. They
got rid of it. Yeah, I had an inkling that they had gotten rid of it. Yeah, I mean, the implications for mass incarceration when it comes to, we've already discussed this a little bit. We talked about roughly 4% of all drug arrests are related to cannabis. But in 2016, there were 587,700 cannabis arrests in the U.S., roughly 40% of all drug arrests. Yeah, the vast majority, nearly 90% of these arrests were for simple possession, not sale or manufacture. And we talked about this earlier. It adds up to
and I bet
more arrests than all violent crimes, which is crazy.
It was, one of those situations where it's like a whole bunch of cops just like showing up, causing a scene, like keeping their lights on all the time, like just embarrassing these people over something that, I mean, it's just it's a plan,
right?
You know?
Yeah, it's a serious problem.
I just don't understand how they can keep it like scheduled the way that it is.
That really bothers me.
In the same like schedule as some like really addictive,
it's heroin,
like, proven to be addictive narcotic substances.
Right.
And I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, I have a story.
Oh yeah.
If you guys want to hear it.
Please.
Okay, so I was very, very anti-drugs, anti-alcohol, I was a straight edge.
Straight edge. X's on your hands.
That's what that means. I did have X's on my hands. Lots of eyeliner too. But yeah, I had never smoked. I had never drank. And at the time, I was a touring musician full time. And so I was in Colorado. I was about 26. And one of my favorite bands, I won't name which band, but I was. It was a lot of fun. Not partiers, but they offered me, they were smoking like a medical grade blunt that they had just got from the dispensary. And this was about 2015, so it was legal at the time, recreationally. So I'm like, you know what? My favorite band offers me some weed. I'm going to smoke it. It's legal.
Right.
So I do, and I didn't know what I was expecting. I'd never done any kind of mind-altering anything, and it was not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't. You know, like the first couple times you do it, it's an experience. But it's like, I didn't drink till I was around that time too, and I'd say the drinking was far worse.
Oh yeah.
But growing up and not ever doing it or trying it, it was my perspective was very skewed on what it is now. As someone who has, I have tried alcohol. I've tried, weed and stuff, and it's like my perspective before I had ever experienced it or been around someone, because I used to push people away that were into that because,
Right.
Dare worked on me for a
Right. Dare worked for you.
Yeah, no, I thought it was something that degenerate people did.
Right.
And I also did not have very many friends.
Oh. So sad.
But I have lots of great friends. Not that they all smoke. Not all my friends smoke, but
You're like Adam ruins everything. He doesn't get any invites.
But it's the kind of people that don't discriminate against someone who uses something, and it's like medically. So yeah, that's my story about perspective and
Sure.
If you haven't tried it, you don't have to try it, but maybe you should.
Are you now advocating for it?
I'm not advocating. I mean, the CBD oil works great for.
Yeah, for a lot of
CBD
people.
oil is amazing.
Have you ever seen
Like-
a dog with arthritis and then they start giving
Yeah.
the dogs CBD oil?
CBD
Yeah, my
dog has a whole
aunt.
new life.
Yeah.
CBD products in general have so many like really good qualities to them. Like their CBD salve is really good for like muscle relaxing.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of like, it's like a little lotion. It kind of like menthols up, and pain relief and stuff like that. It's really nice.
Not just CBD oil. If you are against cannabis or marijuana, I urge you to go and watch a video of a child getting administered their cannabis. I guess
Seizure, like when they're having seizures.
yeah, when they're having
Yeah.
a
It's
seizure.
incredible.
It
It's
is incredible.
amazing.
And people with Parkinson's disease too, who constantly
Absolutely.
shake.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those videos always make me cry.
Yeah.
I'm like so soft-hearted, and
I am too.
they
It's
always
Seeing
make me
someone
cry.
Get an implant when they haven't
Never
I had
heard
never heard
before.
before,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's exact when somebody finds relief after they have literally been constantly shaking every second of their lives for God only knows how long. Like the relief alone, that's what makes me cry. It's
And
like
then-
I feel so much for them.
And then
you
imagine
know?
the child who came into
yeah.
this world only experiencing that and not even
Right.
really knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And a substance that was made illegal under racist ideas is preventing that child from living a quality of life.
Right.
That's honestly, if you're against it, no one is asking you to partake in it. But I urge you personally to go and watch, many stories out there that are available for all of us to see.
Reefer Madness.
It's not one
It's
that I
not one of
suggest.
those.
But
Very racist, actually.
But on that topic, Reefer Madness was a part of the slander campaign that the media,
Oh yeah.
including Hollywood, unfortunately at that time, was in on. And let's see, Reefer Madness came out
It's 39.
in 36.
Close.
Close.
Reefer Madness was
It's an upside
released
down.
in 1936. This was right after Anslinger spoke to Congress during the Great Depression.
Was I right? Was that the year it was prohibited?
What's that? I'm sorry.
36. Does it say?
36.
Yeah.
As a result, by his efforts in 1936, all states had some form of cannabis regulation laws.
Yeah.
The film Reefer Madness was released. It depicted marijuana as a drug that could lead to violence, rape, suicide, and psychosis.
Oh my God.
So imagine all these people, that are just now getting a TV for the first time, to be honest with you.
Right.
They get to see that,
Oh, I don't even think they had TVs
No,
then.
they
would have
go
seen
to
them in the
theater.
movies.
They were going to see. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Didn't even get it. Yeah.
The
break.
Nickelodeon down the
I think
road.
it's the
The
50s.
Nickelodeon, that's
Yeah.
right.
This is when they started having TVs
Yeah.
in their house.
There you go. There you go.
Get the man a
And
nickel.
1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, which restricted marijuana use to only those that could pay a heavy excise tax.
Yeah, there's like a 30% tax in Colorado. I read that today.
Really?
In one of the Washington Post.
So it's
There's like
expensive.
there's several different taxes that add up to about 30%. So they're making bank, which is like, that is one of the biggest arguments for it, right? Is that we could probably fix the deficit if
Yeah.
we federally
Yeah.
legalized cannabis and they were taxing it. If there was even a small tax on it, they could make so much money that we could probably fix our deficit.
If it gets legalized, and let's say it's it's not going to get rid of this underground market for
Oh
it,
no.
though.
No, people are still going to buy it illegally. They're still selling it illegally in Colorado.
Right.
And people go to jail for that because it's illegal. Even though it's been legalized, it's not legal for them to be selling it because it's not regulated. So, and they're not getting taxed on it. Let's be
Right.
honest. That's the biggest problem, is that they're not making tax money off it. So they're absolutely going to put you in jail for that. But those huge windfalls that they have, like in Colorado, have allowed them to fund initiatives like combating homelessness, and they put $35 million towards building new schools because they've made so much freaking money off of this in just Colorado alone.
Just one state.
Just one state.
That's wild.
And that federal tax would just go on top of whatever the state was taxing. So yeah, it would be more expensive, but also those taxes would, like we would hope, would go to helping people more than they would be, or helping fix things like our infrastructure, or the Green New Deal, or universal health care, or free college, or all of the things that we could really use as a country that everybody wants to ask the question, how can they be funded? This is probably how they could be funded. We could probably make more money this way than any other way. And I had the question, like, does supply and demand dictate that there'd be like a huge influx of cash and then it would deflate? Like, would it fall off? But I don't think that's the case, because the states have not seen that trend.
No.
And their regulation of it and everything. I don't think that it would be any different. I think that it would be, and if they just kept a mandated tax on that, I think that they would be just making money hand over fist, which is not necessarily a good reason, but it is a reason. Like, I don't know how much you agree with that, but it is a reason that
Right.
that maybe legalization would be a good idea for our country, because it might help us in a way that we're kind of severely hurting right now. Like,
absolutely.
we have such a huge deficit,
Absolutely.
and there's so many things that we need in this country, things like universal health care, and that's always the question from Republicans, right? It's like, well, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to fund it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's my answer.
Well, I mean,
We didn't talk about anything negative, but there are people who think that there are negative things about it. There are people who think that it'll affect workplace behavior. There are people who think that it will, that people who do it are degenerates. So
listen,
Well, the
just
workplace thing can be mandated. Like, you can be,
yeah.
you can say you can't smoke weed if you work here, even
Yeah,
if it's illegal.
I was
thing.
just about to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The United States, military, they're not going to say just because it's federally legal, like everybody can start smoking weed and
Right.
do whatever they want to do.
But I mean,
These
they
big
can smoke and they can drink.
cigarettes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I see what you're saying. So what happens after prohibition?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. What happens after it? I mean, it's just, would it just become just another thing?
You're right. Because you're right. You can't drink, while you're working. You can't be inebriated.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's just like now. Like, I have a friend, not going to name them, but they go to work inebriated all the time.
Drunk?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, what we're talking about now.
okay.
They smoke. And so, and that's like, at the end of the day, they get their job done. They
Right.
probably shouldn't.
Right.
And most people are going to feel that way, I think. I think most people are like, I don't particularly want to go to work high. You know what I
If
mean?
you're operating heavy machinery.
Unless you
Right,
work in
things
a
like
restaurant
that.
And you go to the kitchen. I don't think
Right.
I've ever worked with a cook that wasn't.
No, that is so true. That is so true.
If somebody's life is in your hands, you probably should. If you're flying a plane, driving a bus,
Right. Like all of those things, absolutely.
taxi,
you know,
need to be
right.
Uber. You don't need to be.
But there's
needing to
nothing
have a-
stopping people from, I mean, other than the fact that it's illegal. There's a lot of people who use it
Right.
anyway and who are
Right.
doing those things already. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not really changing that much. I don't think there's a huge proportion of people who are like, oh, I'm going to start using it because it's legal now.
Yeah.
I think there's people who use it and people who don't. And, you know, it is what it is kind of deal. But I don't know. I mean, that's just me speculating.
The main issue is that it is a Schedule 1 and that it
That's a
has
huge issue.
prevented
Yeah, that-
scientists and doctors from studying its
And
benefits.
also just the mass
and the
incarceration
negatives.
thing. I mean, that's
Oh,
just
gosh.
huge.
Absolutely.
Also, I just
It's
want to
just an
shout out
excuse.
13 because everybody should watch 13.
13 is
The documentary about
is
mass incarceration,
deep.
especially disproportionate to black
Yeah.
males.
Watch it.
It's deep and it's
Watch
heavy,
it.
but it's so good.
We
It's
don't-
so good
we
and
don't
it's
have
so much good
time-
info.
We don't have time in 2021 for you to keep saying, "Oh, I can't watch that kind of stuff because we just don't
Yeah.
have time."
It's time. It's
Yeah.
time, guys.
Yeah.
Definitely
Get
watch it.
educated.
Yeah.
But aside from the lack of study, you know, it's general like the roots of it being criminalized over false, I don't know, a false narrative.
Oh, yeah.
It is aiding to. It's a big spotlight. It's helping, you know, to create a big spotlight on mass incarceration in America, and we spend a lot of money.
You know how much money it costs to keep somebody in jail for
It's
a year?
a lot of money.
It's so much money. I think I saw somewhere it's like $100,000.
Wow.
It doesn't seem like it should be that
Per
much.
person.
Yeah, look it up and see. I might be
Okay.
wrong. I might be
Okay,
wrong.
okay.
Don't quote me on that one. Speaking of things to not quote me on, last week I was talking about an episode of The Nod where we were talking about this family and how they still had a relationship with the family that had essentially owned them, you know, during slavery times and things like that. It is from The Nod, and the episodes are The Hairstons, Part 1 and 2. And that was their name. I was trying to remember their name. It's the Hairstons and the Harstons. Same name, just said differently for the white family and the black family, which I think is it was very common and I think is very interesting.
That
But
is The Nod.
The Nod is the name of the podcast.
Okay.
And it's really good. You should absolutely listen to it. It's
Shout
a
out
great
to The Nod.
podcast. Yeah,
Yeah,
shout
it's
out to
really
The Nod.
Okay, we'll check that out. This is from LAO, Legislative Analyst's Office, the California Legislator's nonpartisan fiscal and policy advisor. How much does it cost to incarcerate an inmate? California's annual cost to incarcerate an inmate in prison. This is from 2018, 2019. It literally has like a broken down like list.
Wow.
There's
How
a
much is it?
list, bro. You were very close.
I'm close.
It was close. On average, it costs $81,000.
I thought it was up there. Per year.
Inmate.
I'd be interested to see how that breaks down.
Oh,
They have
there's
it
a little
broken
breakdown
down.
here. They got security, inmate healthcare, facility operations and records, administration, inmate food and activities, rehabilitation programs, quote unquote miscellaneous, which is only $375 for some reason.
It's probably things like libraries and art teachers and that kind of thing.
Now, hold up now. Rehabilitation programs. The whole war on drugs was supposed to be about
Right.
rehabbing people that have problems.
But they never actually did any of that.
Ever.
No, it's just putting people in jail. Like, I don't know that there's
And
really that many
costing
rehab
taxpayers
programs.
like a shit ton of fucking money right
There's
now.
a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of programs in prisons and jails for people like that. Not here, but there are.
Not here.
Okay, I work with a lot
Somewhere.
of people that are a lot of felons.
Yeah.
Just in the glass business, that's just something that happens sometimes.
Mhm.
And a lot of them have talked about different places they've spent time, And there's this one within like a few hours of here they always hope that they get sent to, and they have like rec time. They can learn how they take college classes like that are real classes.
Right.
And there's like motorcycle shops and like all kinds of crazy like I want to go there kind of thing.
Nice.
And so yeah, that's the way that that kind of thing is funded.
That's crazy.
That is intense.
Because I mean, if prisons are for profit, I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'm curious how some of them afford better care, or is it just a thing I care more about the rehabilitation of these people, or is it because they have more money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Where's that?
I really doubt it's because they care about anybody.
Where's that standard come from?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Also, glass business, not methamphetamine. I cut mirror.
Yeah.
And I install shower doors.
He actually cuts glass
With what?
with a
With
tool.
a diamond tip glass cutter.
There you go.
TC17
There
is
you
the.
So you do
the Hensley
TC17?
name. I don't do it. I use a tool that I use to cut
Oh my God.
glass.
1960s, cannabis gained popularity among the counterculture who considered it harmless high. Its use was popular among college students, free-spirited beats. I don't even know what that means.
Beatniks.
Anti-war activists, hippies, and other youth. John F. Kennedy and Vice President Lyndon Johnson commissioned reports that found that marijuana did not induce violence or lead to the use of other more dangerous drugs.
Wow.
I did not know that.
Which, what did we hear the entire time we were in like health class in high
Right.
school?
It's
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
It's a gateway. And they're literally saying they prove that it was not.
In the 60s, they said that it actually isn't.
Wow.
65 to 70, cannabis arrests on state level increased tenfold as authorities began to crack down on marijuana use and distribution. And then in 1970, Congress passed the Controlled Substances Act as the top of it there, which placed marijuana as a Schedule I drug along with LSD and heroin. According to the act, marijuana had no medicinal value and a high potential for abuse, giving it harsher criminal penalties. This law made it difficult for doctors and scientists to study marijuana and its many uses. And, that brings us back to that conversation about the mass incarceration. It has been for a long time a concern of the overuse of police presence and police authority.
Yeah.
And, to me personally, the Controlled Substances Act just gave police an excuse to be more aggressive.
Yeah, I agree. I think
know?
that it just added fuel to the fire.
So if we look at that Controlled Substances Act, if we look at it being a Schedule 1 and we reduce those penalties or those that crime behind it,
Yeah.
then we can possibly attack this.
I think it's a huge step in the right direction for solving mass incarceration. And especially when you look at the numbers comparatively for black men. I mean, that is a huge problem we have in our prisons to begin with. And then you're looking at it and you're saying, how do these things correlate? Okay, we're seeing huge proportions of people who are being arrested for cannabis are black.
Yeah.
Huge proportion of people in prisons are black. How do we solve this problem?
Yeah.
Okay, we decriminalize this
Hello.
and we let those people out of prison, and then suddenly, but the problem is that prisons are for profit. So they don't want to let them out.
They don't
They're
want
making
them
too
out.
much money off of them. They're also using them as slaves, essentially. They pay them a slave wage. They pay them nothing to work in their factories. And they usually do dangerous jobs.
Yeah.
And it's just ugh.
And state to state, the
infuriating.
laws are not consistent either. Like
they're
Louisiana,
not.
they have a 3-strike law, but then in New Orleans, it's different.
It's
somehow.
decriminalized there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
Like you just hop over a county line and you're like, hey,
Right.
you better have a blunt in your
They
pocket.
don't have counties in Louisiana; they're parish.
My bad.
Parishes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hop over a parish
Whatever.
swampland there.
Swampland.
It's all swamp.
It's all swamp.
Holler.
I
Well,
still
where
wanna
I
go
live is a
visit.
swamp.
I still
Yeah.
want to go visit. I'm gonna be
Oh,
careful about where
yes.
We're
I
gonna do
go, but
on location in the middle of the swamp.
that would be
Get
awesome.
eaten by an alligator.
That would be awesome.
No, as soon as this crap is over with COVID, we should all take a trip home. We can stay with my family,
Oh, we're going.
and it would be so fun. We could
Yeah.
go into New Orleans for a few days and get an Airbnb. It'd be really fun.
Yeah. Well, there is a positive to this conversation as we close out. There's a group called the Last Prisoner Project. You can go look them up at thelastprisonerproject.org. They are dedicated to freeing every last prisoner of the unjust war on drugs, starting with 40,000 people in prison for cannabis offenses, legal in most states. And I saw like a little documentary on them, and it was very interesting. A lot of smiling faces, a lot of people that were out of jail that were
Yeah.
supporting with them, and they were talking about just how much that they helped change their lives once they got out of
Amazing.
prison. So
Cool.
yeah, just check that out. Our group's working actively, not more or less just talking about it, but trying to work with legislation in helping lives. These people are human.
Yeah.
These are human beings.
Yeah.
They didn't murder anyone. They didn't kill
No.
anyone's dog. You know.
Yeah. Why is this making up such a huge portion of the
Mm-hmm.
people who are in jail? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, when you have it that it's legalized medicinally or recreationally in like 29 states or something like that. Like, the fact of the matter is, we should be past this by now.
Yeah.
Like, we should have moved in a direction where there are not 40% of the arrests made in a year and drug arrests made in a year
Right.
are because of cannabis.
Right,
Like,
right,
that
right.
just seems silly.
Right.
It seems like it's just being used as an excuse to put black people in jail so these jails can make more money.
Right, and the idea is that these people go to jail, they can't make bail, they go to their court date, and they're stuck in jail because they don't have the money to get help.
Yeah, which brings me
help,
to my action
whatever.
point. Go watch 13. Please go watch 13. It's on Netflix.
I
Vicious
don't think
cycle.
I've seen it.
It's a vicious
You haven't
cycle.
seen it? Oh man, we
It's a
gotta
vicious
watch
cycle.
it. It's yeah, it's crazy. And watching it, you'll just have a better understanding. And yeah, it's heavy, but it's important. So please go watch
Is
it.
that your action?
That's my action point.
Okay.
Go watch 13.
Okay.
Not directly related to this, but definitely correlates.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Me?
Do you have an action point or no?
Not really.
That's okay.
Yeah, not really. Action point as always. I mean, you know, be a good person.
Yeah,
good
love
person.
each other.
Don't be a
Empathize.
dick.
Empathize,
Or that.
You know,
Yeah, empathize. That's a big one.
think about somebody that's not yourself.
Mm.
Maybe something that you don't like has a lot that can help somebody else, and maybe something that someone else doesn't like helps you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't you just get over it?
Just have some empathy. Not super difficult.
Let's definitely try to educate ourselves on the different, issues that is plaguing America on the topic of cannabis. And as JP said, just doing that is going to help you think about somebody else. It's going to help you think about somebody else's situation. Just because it's not affecting you doesn't mean you can't go learn about it and then help others who are trying to help someone who has been affected by that situation.
Yeah. And there's so much literature out there, guys, about this topic. Like, there's so many academic journal articles about it. You can look up pretty much anything, like cannabis and opioid crisis, cannabis and mass incarceration, cannabis and crime rates. Like, you can look up any of those things. You're going to get some scholarly journals. Try to read the academic journals. I found several of my sources were from the Washington Post, but also I found one of mine was from the Addiction Research Report, which is a scholarly journal, and then also one was from the Contemporary Drug Problems Journal.
Wow.
And all of these are things that can educate you. So just read one article, do something to educate yourself a little bit and see, And if you agree with us or agree with what we're talking about, and think that it should be decriminalized, or maybe you think it should be legalized, read about it so you can support that. You know,
And
that's a
that
good.
goes to more than just this one topic.
Yeah, it goes for all of our
Yeah,
topics.
look at both sides of any argument.
Yes, you should
Otherwise,
always
won't
be
get the full
critical.
story,
I tell my
which is
students that
my
all the
action
time.
plan, guys, 'cause
Yes.
I forgot to make one. There you go.
Be critical. That's a good one.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one.
good.
And with that being said, guys, I think we're kind of coming to a close here. And I just wanted to let you all know that we'll have an episode coming out next week. And then we're taking a short hiatus for the holidays.
It's a very special episode next week.
Yeah, next week is going to be special. You guys are going to love it. And please go check out Racism After Death. It's in the Spark in the Valley feed. Please go watch it on YouTube or listen to it anywhere that wherever you're listening to this podcast. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. Please let us know. And please like and subscribe to our social media, which is Spark in the Valley for Facebook and for Instagram, and for our YouTube as well. And if you can rate and review us on whatever platform you listen to podcasts, that helps us out immensely. So please, if you could rate and review us, hopefully a good rating and a good review, that would be wonderful. We actually got a really awesome review this week. So shout out to, I think it was Rachel. I think her name was Rachel. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for the wonderful review. And we'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Yes. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holiday. Yeah, that's all encompassing. Happy holidays.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Hey guys, Cody here. I'm now going to play you a clip from our new special, Racism After Death. I produced this with hosts Alex Sharp and Skylar Knox. Skylar did all the research and brought this to our attention. I hope you enjoy this clip, and if you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, it's on our channel. Just look up Racism After Death.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Alex Sharp with Purple Mountain Pods, and today we're actually having a special feature, and we have Skylar Knox here with us. So, Skylar, why don't you tell me your story?
Hey.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. First, my little disclaimer is that I am a white woman, and
As am I.
yes, right. But I have different sorts of resources and privilege that I'm taking, and I'm going to do the best things that I can with it.
I think that that's our responsibility.
And
right?
that really never really hit me before until you're facing with like a huge reality.
Sure.
So I guess we'll just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I have a friend who really enjoys paying tribute and laying flowers in local cemeteries, and she's interested in ones that are usually like small family areas or smaller plots, but she came across this cemetery and it blew her mind, and she called me, and she's having a whole moment because she is just blown away by what she just saw.
And where is this cemetery?
This is actually the cemetery is called Eastport African American Cemetery, but it's also known as the Good Citizens Cemetery, which makes this story all that much more important to tell. So my girlfriend, she comes and she's telling me about everything she's seeing, and I really wanted to see it. And I had some flowers at the house, and I told her, I was like, well, let's go over there and put them on there. And when you picture like a forgotten or an abandoned graveyard, you kind of get that image of, trees and a little bit of overgrown grass and what you would imagine or see in a movie.
Right. just a little spook factor.
Yeah, no. This was the most shocking thing I've seen.
Right.
And it's in our own backyard.
Yeah.
So,
And this is in Knoxville.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. So we go there, and it's not just overgrown. I would advise for nobody to try to go in further than what you can see.
Right.
Of course, I pushed it.
Yeah.
But I had someone with me. I had I wasn't alone. I was very aware it was daylight, and I had to know.
Yeah.
But
So
as a disclaimer.
what did you find?
Well, so when we first go in, on the fence line, you see a couple of headstones.
Mhm.
And there's a little plot up on the top, like on the corner, that is the only piece of land that's actually been maintained from a small family, and I'll tell you more about that. But we go in, and you're moving branches, and you start seeing poking up of headstones
Yeah.
and knocked over things. But not just that, but you can't see the majority of them. There is thousands of people buried here, and I could find maybe 30 tombstones.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And it is just overgrown with kudzu and sinkholes. And sinkholes, yes. Grave slip, coffin collapse.
Oh,
I don't
man.
know if imagine just this massive mound shaped like a coffin
Oh,
with
spooky.
yes.
Oh.
And these sinkholes have been just so sudden and just dropped that the roots of the trees are coming out the side.
Wow.
And it's been neglected for so long that trees are literally wrapping around headstones.
Wow.
And
So safe to say, pretty dangerous.
incredibly dangerous.
Spark in the Valley is a Purple Mountain Pods production. It is hosted by Julius Johnson, Alex Sharp, Jean-Pierre Vasquez, and Cody Hensley. This podcast is produced and directed by Julius Johnson and co-produced by Alex Sharp, Jean-Pierre Vasquez, and Cody Hensley. Music supervising and original music by Cody Hensley. Studio engineering and management by Rob Barnett. Research supervision by Alex Sharp. Social media management by Jean-Pierre Vasquez. Special thanks to McMinn County Democratic Party and the McMinn